In the first film, Hutch burns this obshak money from the Russian mob, as well as paintings and whatever they have in this grand vault. And so now he owes that debt, and he's paying it off by doing missions. Whatever he's told to do, he just does it. He kind of doesn't ask the question of, is it good or ethical or whatever. But we've established a character who secretly, not so secretly, enjoys beating the living shit out of other people. And so he's happy to do this job and have a reason for it, because he has to pay this debt back. We rejoin this story of the family. Hutch is doing these jobs, and like many dads, he's not around much because he's working. But his wife is also working. She's a real estate agent, and she's gone all the time, and the kids are getting a little older, and they're busy, their lives are busy, and they're on their phones all the time, and he sees his family really dispersing, and he thinks, I need to reconnect, this thing's going away. And so his wife agrees, and so he wants to take them to the place that he remembers as a kid. In his mind, it's this big vacation spot with so much fun to be had, and really a huge water park, and just, it turns out to be a rinky-dink vacation town. We all feel that rage, right? And you just can't act on it, but in a movie is a chance to have fun and a smile, and hopefully there are a lot of smiles in this violent film as well, at the notion that what if you could? What if life was more of a fantasy and you could act on things and let it flow. I was a comedy writer for 25 years. That was really just how I made my living. And then I started getting these dramatic roles in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and then a lot of film roles as well. And I thought maybe I could do an action movie because I was in pretty good shape. Which is to say I wasn't damaged in any way. I only broken a few bones in my life. And I was willing to do the training, so I did train, and I learned screen fighting. And I trained for about 2 years while I was still shooting Better Call Saul, and we were writing this movie and selling it and reselling it, and I just kept up the training. I had a long way to go, and I got good enough to do the stunts in Nobody Won. And then I kept my training up, even though the movie ended. We shot it and we cut it. No, I kept training. I kept the basics just as part of my workout routine. But then I also still carried on training with my friend Daniel Bernhard, who is in this movie as he was in Nobody Won, who's one of the great stunt actors of our time. So I kept up that training with Daniel. So in a way, I was able to do more in Nobody 2, because Nobody 2 represents 6 years of training, whereas Nobody Won was 2 years of training. Greg Rementer and Kirk and Kyle, this team of 87 North stunt people, the best in the world. A lot of times they're designing fights that are meant to be as impressive as possible in a smooth and kind of visually appealing way. And with Hutch, the fights tend to be more clumsy and bludgeony, more kind of heavy. And so oftentimes they'll design a really beautiful fight, and then I'll say, but can we make it clumsier and shittier and take out the best moves, because Hutch really can't do that, Plus a lot of stunt guys are much younger than me, and they're really good, and it's all they do, and they can do kicks that I can't do. They can do all kinds of things that I can't actually do. I couldn't wait to have more fight sequences, and we have quite a few in this. And I love all the fights. The elevator fight is a great one, with a lot of moves happening in a short amount of time, and Hutch, having the element of surprise on these three, assassin soldiers And even the arcade fight was really fun, busting back into that place and cutting loose. Every fight has its own character to it, its own little story to it, and I just had a really wonderful time doing it. And the stunt guys are always the best in the world, and they're having fun doing it.
It was such a lovely experience to play in the first one, Nobody Won, because it was such a rare kind of story where it uses a lot of the things that are maybe sort of formulas for a certain kind of genre film, of action films, but it mixes it with profoundly real human experiences, real situations in families and in couples that people can totally relate to. And I really feel that that is exactly the same that we're doing in this second iteration of this story. We continue to build on the experiences of what it is like to be a family, and I think we all invest a lot of real feelings in those stories. It's kind of unique because if you take away all of the action movies, you still have an excellent story with really beautiful situations about human relations. Hutch Mansell is your kind of typical guy who's doing a job, sort of a 9-to-5 job that he doesn't love, but he's just sort of like tagging along for the sake of what is expected of him. And at the same time, he has so much pent-up rage inside for all of the micro and macro aggressions that humans sort of exert on each other day to day. And that we, at the same time, tell people, oh, you're not allowed to react. And so in that way, Hutch Mansell is basically the fantasy of a lot of people, I think. You know, a guy who gets to act out and do it without punishment. First of all, I really just enjoy Bob as a human. And then there's this wonderful thing that is that he's also a writer. So he's a writer, he's a comedian, he is an actor, and he just has a very unique style as well that I really so appreciate. There's like a certain type of energy, and the writer in him is so interesting as well because you just see him being both really a great writer, and at the same time he's also super collaborative. He's super collaborative and super open and wants everyone to shine. I love it when people are pouring heart and soul into things, and I see that with Bob. You know, he gets up every day and he works out like a madman to do these scenes and do them credibly, and then he does it really well. It just wouldn't seem that you could have all of those talents in one package, but you do. Nobody 2 is exhilarating, an incredible ride. It is a lot of fun. It is also heartfelt, warm, heartwarming, and it also has a lot of truth in it, even in the middle of it being a fantasy.
It had a lot of banging, you know, shooting and all that, but it had kind of a very human feeling about it. And particularly, I think, in this production, because the family is emphasized a lot amidst all the wacky stuff going on in the script and the shooting and all of it. There's a real emphasis to keep the family together in spite of it all. I think there's a part of Grandpa that kind of likes the way things have turned out, because it gives him the opportunity to keep doing his shtick. He can save lives, he can kill, he can strategize, you know, so he's had a lot of experience in this area. I often get the feeling when we're doing a scene together that we could be talking in the scene, acting, doing it, and at the same time he's seeing everything else that's happening within 360 degrees. But he doesn't flinch. It's not like he stops and it just registers. And when we finish the take, he makes the adjustments. But he's very aware in a very cool kind of way. Even when he's looking at the camera and doing his lines and acting, if something happens here that's not quite right, cut, and he's over there. You know, he takes care of it.
Nobody Won was such a family favorite. I have 3 boys, and I think we saw it 5 times. And the great Bob Odenkirk, my God, what a fantastic actor. I mean, when an actor of that magnitude asks you to be in something with them, the answer is yes. I get to play his nemesis in this film, which is really great, and it's a part that Bob wrote, and it's a different kind of nemesis. I told Bob he put the hot in psychotic. I am having such a good time playing her. I think, you know, like I said, I've been busy being a mom of boys, and you have to kind of hold it together when you're doing that. And all of a sudden, with this character, I got this great opportunity to just sort of pull the ripcord and play a complete lunatic. And it's really been very freeing, and it's really kind of fun and great to play someone so just a little bit unconventional, let's say.
And the character I play, Harry Mansell, I think, you know, he's unique in the sense of he grew up in a very unorthodox family, surrounded by the love of his family, though, and I think he has a mutual love back to that family. And he will put everything to the side and everything on the line for his family. You know, the character seems to be well versed in multiple things, very different skill sets. You know, he seems like a well-traveled man, and I think in my imagination of Harry Mansell and the whole Mansell family is that David brought the boys into the business in their teenage years, maybe around the same age as we find Brady Mansell in this film. And at that age, you know, maybe the boys had to pick up a gun or pick up a weapon and defend their life or take a life. I don't think they had a lot of fun in their lives. In fact, they say in this draft that the funnest day of Harry's life and Hutch's life was the 1 week that they spent in Plummersville. And for me, Harry, he's fun, he's cool, but he won't bust your ass. You think about how Harry fights, he fights on whatever vibe he's feeling. You know, he's a vibe fighter. So we saw him in the first film where he was using a sniper rifle to take out enemies. This part of the story, we see that he's been hanging out in Osaka. Maybe he spent some time in Kyoto. I think he may have spent a couple of months in Okinawa, which is the foundation of karate. And I think he's absorbed these Japanese skill into his fighting techniques. The thing that I love about the character Hutch in the Nobody sequels is that he actually can take a punch. In most action films, the good guy never gets hit. He's always accurate and precise, but no, Hutch is like his family life. It's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit unpredictability. It's a little bit of, you know what, take a punch, give a punch, and it's not so cookie cut. And I think that's when you watch these action sequences, it has a level of reality. Yeah, when you think about, you know, Bob Odenkirk, who's had a great career acting in TV dramas, comedies, spin-offs into his own, you know, when you watch Better Call Saul, you know, you see that he's just seasoned and he's comfortable in his art. And I think once an artist becomes comfortable in their art, they have a freedom to express it in different ways. So whether he's here to make you laugh or he's here to kick some ass, it's an expression of his art, an expression of his growth as an artist. And you know, some people would say when they saw Nobody that he was an unlikely action hero. And then after they saw it, they put him right in the category, boom, boom, action hero.
Like life, the character of Wyatt is not simple. He isn't a simple guy. You think he is at first, because he's set up to be kind of the heavy. He's in charge of this town. He feels threatened. He's got a lot going on, and he takes it out on Bob's character, on Hutch. But then, you know, we slowly discovered that there's more to him than just being the bad guy, and that he and Bob have a lot in common. It's such a wonderful setting for a story whose tone is playful, you know, and dangerous at the same time. And I don't recall a straight-out action movie taking place in a carnival setting, an amusement park setting. I've seen some horror movies, you know, I've seen some family movies, I've seen some rom-coms in this kind of a setting, but never a full-out action movie. So it's going to be a lot of fun for folks to see and we take full advantage of every single corner and crevice of this place. Everything that they're doing and have done from the early days is pretty amazing. Like, they've taken the craft of stunts to another level, you know, and there's not only the top-notch professionalism in terms of the execution of it, but taking it to a whole other creative level where they're really the ones telling the story, and it's weaved into the whole craft of movie making. I love that it takes the thing that made it successful in the original, which is essentially an everyman and your average family, and raises the stakes to like an incredible high, but it all feels not only organic but also stylized. You know, there's something about making that switch into the stylized fun that involves the audience, you know, and yet it feels real, and we honor that in Nobody 2 as well.
What I really loved was the universe that it sort of opened up. You know, I think so many of these films nowadays, they really need to establish the rules, the sandbox, if you will, that they're going to be, all the characters are going to be playing in. And I think the first film did such a great job of sort of establishing, you know, the parameters of what could happen in that film, and those parameters just kept getting, you know, amped up and up, and you know, to be able to see all of that, you know, knowing what we were going to be doing on the second one, really, you know, made me incredibly excited to come and, you know, be the bad guy for a little while. The film is essentially about a dad just trying to go on a family vacation. But it just so happens that the dad is constantly dealing with the most dangerous people on the face of the earth. Sheriff Abel is one of a handful of quote-unquote bad guys in the film, but Abel is really kind of the bad sheriff in town. He's the one that very clearly has his fingers on the pulse and is doing the work of a couple of higher-ups, but deep down is very, very eager to sort of climb the ranks and assume the role of top boss. He's the guy that doesn't trust Hutch. He's the guy that right away doesn't like the look of him, doesn't like the cut of his jib. And so Abel is kind of focused, laser focused on Hutch, because he just has a feeling that there's something about this guy that isn't quite right. And it turns out, yeah, it's a pretty good hunch.
When I first read this script for the sequel, I loved it. And I loved the underlying premise. It's like passing father to son. Do you pass the traumas of the past? can you leave your heirs better off than you? I think it's, again, another relatable story. That's what's fun about this franchise. It's a bombastic action movie, but we always sort of root it with a really sort of human story and a relatable story. And this is really about generational, grandfather to father to son. And I think this is a really fun story to tell. When you hire Timu to direct your film, he's going to amp up the action. And you just go back and look at his catalog of work. I'm a fan. It's crazy, it's bonkers, it's violent, it's visceral, it's bloody, and for all the right reasons. And it's so fun, and we were excited for him to infuse that style into Nobody 2 and give it its own voice in the action. You know, we had a company, 87 North, and the mandate there was always like, train the actors to do as much as possible, never break the illusion of the characters. They're the ones that are in charge of the characters and bringing these characters to life. Now, if we can give them the physicality to do that and teach them to do the choreography, we have so much more opportunity in how we photograph this and tell the story. Bob was like an incredible test case for this, because you're right, he didn't have an action background, he didn't have action chops. He's an incredible actor, he's a credible writer, he's a credible storyteller and creator, but that was something, one feather he didn't have in his cap yet. And so him taking on the discipline to train with Daniel Bernhardt, and Bob never stopped training. That sort of like learning, that stuff became a way of life for him. And when you get an actor that does that and immerse themselves in it, it allows you to do something special on the other side. It allows you to create action that you couldn't create for some other actor that doesn't, have the time, really under the hood of doing fight scenes. And now Bob's getting really, really good at it, and it's fun to see, and we can amp up the level of this film.
We catch up in Nobody 2 a few years later. Hutch has been working, for the guys who he had kind of decided to not work for before. I don't know if he's ready to take a vacation, but I think the family's ready for him to take a vacation. And he decides to try to take a break. And he's got to figure out how to get out of the trouble while the family is really sort of dependent on him, because that's what happens when you're on your vacation. You're much more connected. You don't have your normal routine. You're sort of in it together, and so they're much closer to the danger. And he's got to figure out how to juggle that. He and Sammy are so connected, and it's the most beautiful father-daughter sort of love story in a lot of ways, and just kind of continuation of where they left it in number 1. With Blake, he wants Blake to be better than him and grow up to do his, to literally sort of surpass his weaknesses, and yet he somehow exposes him to all of that stuff all the time. I think it's a really relatable sort of like father-son dynamic. Timo Tjahjanto is really a special director. We are having the privilege of bringing him from Indonesia to his first studio film, and it's been an absolute joy. He is such a tremendous collaborator. He is a gory dude. He really likes his blood, which is great for number 2. He is a fan of number 1. He came into the process respecting what Bob needed out of the character and what had happened to all of the characters in 1 and where they needed to go in 2. But he's been able to give it his own special sauce as well.
I know that when they are putting me to the task to direct this film, that I need to do something a bit different. Back in Indonesia, I'm more known to make sort of violent and dark action films. But with this one, there's a slight adjustment to that. We still get the violence, we still get the crunchy action, but there's a certain, I guess, for the lack of a better word, warmth to it that we apply. This film, we are starting in a point where Hutch is actually somewhat getting back into the action of it all. So he's reliving his life. We kind of learned that he's somewhat of a government agent, and now he's sort of doing all this I guess, mercenary type of jobs for his handler. We call him the barber, and that's where we start. Like, we are seeing a character in Bob Odenkirk as Hutch. We are seeing a character who's slowly beginning to ponder, hey, am I enjoying this violent sort of like lifestyle too much? Is it getting too much into me that I kind of am forgetting my family, that I am forgetting my wife who's supporting me? So that's the kind of like the sort of primary question in the beginning of the film. This is the difference between my previous films, because we are really walking that thin line between Hutch, the father, and the husband, and slash Hutch, the seasoned sort of like killer agent, you know? And I think that fine balance is what lends to so many sort of almost humorous moments, like which can easily turn violent. That juxtaposition between the adorable father, especially Bob is so good at it, him being a father himself, and suddenly at the switch, he just suddenly turns into this almost like a killing machine. The duck boat fight is definitely the most challenging, I would say, when we are shooting this one. So initially we were thinking of, duck boat as in the amphibian boats, but like we can't find that actual vehicle. So we end up thinking, like, what if we just have like a pontoon boat with an actual rubber duck, like a giant rubber ducky on the top of the roof, and Bob loves the idea. So it's almost like a juxtaposition of Hutch Mansell fighting a bunch of goons inside this very goofy looking, like touristy boat, but the fight that happens inside that boat itself. What if our approach here is more like almost kind of like a Jackie Chan film, like there's a certain slapstick quality and a little bit of clumsiness within the choreography, and everybody loves it. They design it, like we execute that within like 2.5 days of just shooting literally in the waters of Winnipeg, in the river of Winnipeg. And yeah, like it's the first time I'm actually shooting something inside the boat, fighting without green screen, so it's all like in real location, and it's fun and dirty, and you'll see something very interesting happen to Hutch later on in that fight. What Bob can do kind of like surpass my expectations, just because he has such a really crazy work ethics, and when he trains, he literally doesn't mess around. He has such a crazy madman discipline when it comes to keeping his body in shape. Like Bob, I think at the time when we were shooting Nobody 2, he was 61, 60, maybe somewhere there. And he realized that, and he just pushes himself to the point where here I am playing somebody with the physique of a man in his late 30s, even. I remember just sitting next to him and I'm chowing down all this sugary set food while he's eating steamed broccoli and carrots. I don't think there is a single time between like us like setting the camera where he's not either doing push-ups or like doing some sort of like weightlifting. So I said, like, Bob, are you sure you don't want like a scene of you in your swimsuit? And it's like, nah. But like actually if he does, like people will see, whoa, Bob Odenkirk got six-pack, and he doesn't even want to show it. So it's cool that he approached the character so much mentally but also physically.
What we ultimately decided was that we needed to make Hutch the underdog again. The experience of the first movie is rooting for the underdog, and Bob Odenkirk obviously playing the ultimate version of the underdog. But the first movie has already come out. That cat is out of the bag. The genie is out of the bottle, and we know that Hutch has a special set of skills. We know that Hutch is a badass. We know that Hutch could dispatch any bad guy that came his way. Knowing all of that, how do we put him back onto his back foot? How do we make him the underdog again? And that is when we all collectively started talking about the idea of a family vacation. Because no matter how much of a killer you are, no matter how badass you are, you're going to be dealing with bad food, bad hotels, long lines, stinky water parks. There's no amount of special op training that can overcome these very human and universal things that all of us experience. And once we keyed in on that, we really had our North Star for the sequel. This movie works because of Bob Odenkirk and how seriously he takes the craft of action. We know that Bob is a great actor. Bob has been nominated for countless awards. Bob has had an extraordinary career as a comedian, as a dramatic actor. The hard part is the action and the amount of time that Bob takes training every day in the gym, learning the choreography, and then ultimately coming up with his own ideas about what this choreography should look like. Here's what would be a really awesome shot, but not only that, here's how we can take this really awesome shot and tie it into something that Hutch is experiencing emotionally. That has been an extraordinary asset. And obviously the team of Greg Rementer and Daniel Bernhardt have built these extraordinary action sequences and these incredibly choreographed fights that the audience is going to eat up. Connie Nielsen brings an emotional authenticity to the film. She's always going through the script. She's talking about her own experiences as a mother. She's always saying, I don't believe I would do this as a mother. I believe I would do this instead. What she is bringing is a level of truth to this character, and she's bringing, as you said, the emotional center of the film. Ultimately, she is the person that is trying to push Hutch to be the best version of himself and to find that balance. And because she is bringing such gravitas to the role, we're rooting for that to happen.
The question is, can you maintain a balance, a work-home life balance? And that rises up to become one of the central themes. And we see that within a moment of time that falls out of balance, and there needs to be an adjustment made. And the solution is, of course, let's take the family on vacation. Seems like a great idea. One every father has conjured. We all as fathers or mothers or parents always have this dream of how perfect the family vacation is going to be. And we all go on that vacation, and it always fails to live up to our fantasy. He is in this tranquil, fun, festive lakeside town, and pokes the hornet's nest of a very serious trade organization that is using that town and the waterway to run all kinds of money and drugs and illegal activity through that very town. In Nobody 2, our big bad is a woman, and she is a badass. And so we wanted someone who represents sort of a mythical big bad. And we had to go with a very big name to embody that. And so it wasn't that large of a list, you know, that could embody that, the character and the substance and the gravitas to imbue the big role that had been written in the role of Lindina. We went out to her off this idea, and the immediate response back was, absolutely yes, let's engage in a conversation. It's incredible watching someone who has lived the life that she lived and had the experiences and the success that she has and has had to play a specific role in a film and fill it with every bit of mastery. Every bit of everything, bit of her life experience is wedged into what she's doing for us. It's really incredible to watch her work.